This is Against All Enemies, a show about threats to American democracy. Political violence is on the rise. An alarming percentage of Americans believe they may have to take up arms against their neighbors. Some are already doing so. Every weekday, Against All Enemies highlights the activities of extremist organizations and their enablers. Our goal is to educate, not to alarm. The threats are real, but if we know what we're up against, together we can beat them.
Hey, I'm Chris Goldsmith from Task Force Butler. We're a group of veterans fighting fascism. We believe using legal means to impose real-world costs on these white supremacists and neo-Nazis is one of the best ways to preserve our civil society. One of the areas where we focus our efforts is in interrupting the radicalization of our fellow service members and veterans. For decades, our country's military has been targeted for recruiting by fascist street gangs. They value our skills, our leadership, and our work ethic. You could play a part in stopping fascist street gangs, and I'm going to tell you how to in a minute. And it doesn't involve a fundraising ask. Although if you ever want to support our work, that's awesome and very much appreciated. Today, we want you to know about an ex-Marine who's leading a group that is a growing threat. This is Chris Pohlhaus. Pohlhaus served in the Marines for 4 years in the 2000s. He started climbing the ladder among the extreme far right when he promoted a countrywide racist banner drop on the first anniversary of George Floyd's murder. Pohlhaus has been raising money to build a compound in Maine. The Maine compound is where Pohlhaus can assemble the neo-Nazi group that he's created. And that group is called Blood Tribe. Their plan is that they'll use this base to turn Maine into an all-white ethnostate. In other words, they want to use it as a training camp to start committing genocide against Americans. There is zero ambiguity about who Chris Pohlhaus and the Blood Tribe are and what they believe. They are Nazis, and they are proud to show us. In April, Pohlhaus and Blood Tribe joined the Proud Boys, Patriot Front, Three Percenters, and White Lives Matter of Ohio to disrupt the rock and roll humanist drag queen story hour outside Akron, Ohio. They have shown up at other similar events in Ohio as well. Blood Tribe terrorized the Akron event by marching around with their ridiculous red and black outfits and chanting Sieg Heil and things like, "There will be blood, blood, blood," which is a ripoff of something that Pohlhaus, I think, learned in basic training. And like the tough guys that they are, everyone but Pohlhaus covered their faces. Obviously, they're so sure of the correctness of their cause that they won't let their beliefs be known. Pohlhaus attended the event with a pistol strapped to his hip. Pohlhaus attended this event openly displaying a weapon and led chants of, quote, "pedophiles get the rope," end quote. Now that "get the rope" reference is something worth spending a moment on. Blood Tribe is referring to a Nazi propaganda fiction novel called The Turner Diaries. The Day of the Rope is a white supremacist slogan referring to mass murders of so-called race traitors. The Turner Diaries inspired another piece of trash white supremacist veteran you've heard of, Timothy McVeigh, the Oklahoma City bomber. Ohio is an open carry state. Task Force Butler is a group of veterans who support the Second Amendment and all of our laws. I'm personally a gun owner, and shooting sports have been a part of my life since I was a little kid. But displaying that weapon in that setting, leading those chants, that was constitutionally protected activity. But it's also conscious intimidation of families and terrorizes little kids. But they've also crossed the line into unlawful activity with firearms, and we'll show you that clip too. The reason why Pohlhaus's intimidation tactics are extremely concerning will become very clear in a moment. Pohlhaus has been asked why Blood Tribe favors these kinds of in-person actions instead of being a keyboard tough guys like so many white supremacists. He talked to the SPLC in a recent interview and said, quote, "So what we want to do is maximize the aggression, the noise, the volume, while also maximizing safety." And he means for the Nazis. He continues saying, And that's another reason why we don't want to engage with any other sort of activism other than in person at our enemies' events. So what he's saying is no more hanging racist banners like Patriot Front and White Lives Matter. Instead, it's just about confronting people, their political enemies. He goes on saying, we go to the enemy, scream at them, give them PTSD, and leave. Now, Chris Pohlhaus is just an angry bully, and he's whipping up a gang of angry bullies, masked cowards, who are the type of people who idolize school shooters and other mass murderers. Pohlhaus was very recently banned from his local Planet Fitness because of his racist t-shirts and his visible swastika tattoo. He's proud to go out in public and use hate imagery to upset and intimidate others. Now, Blood Tribe recently expanded beyond their Ohio actions and his base in Maine to Wisconsin. Last weekend, there was a Pride in the Park event in Watertown, Wisconsin. It's a small town of about 25,000 people, halfway between Milwaukee and Madison. Watertown is your prototypical ex-urban, semi-rural, Midwestern kind of place. Now, the Nazi-adjacent conspiracy theory group Gays Against Groomers and its leader Jamie Mitchell have been promoting disruptions at this event and had urged its extremist followers to join in protest on site. Last year, Task Force Butler released a report. It's called Project Dragoon. In it, we show how prominent anti-trans Twitter accounts making these calls to action online end up creating real-world violence. You can find Project Dragoon on our website. Now, it's no surprise that the Blood Tribe responded to the call to action by showing up with guns and swastika flags. As usual, their faces were covered with neck gaiters and sunglasses, and they repeated their chants of, quote, pedophiles get the rope, end quote. In previous episodes of Against All Enemies, we've shown how the Nazi gangs have a serious pedophile problem. Pohlhaus is surrounded by actual pedophiles because the same depravity that makes people Nazis makes them predators against children. But back to Blood Tribe. These guys are so reviled that even Gays Against Groomers had to put out a statement disavowing them. Now, after January 6th, it's become common among conspiracy theorists to assert that these fascist street gangs are not real, that they're actually just feds in makeup or something. Gays Against Groomers knew releasing this statement, disavowing them, would trigger that response and distract people from the plainly observable facts that this organized anti-LGBTQ movement is closely aligned with these fascist street gangs. They're using each other to terrorize our fellow citizens and to trigger fear in communities. And sometimes that fear is justified. What I'm going to show you next is genuinely alarming. It's video from the Watertown protest. This is video from a collection of journalists who were following Blood Tribe as they left the protest and walked to their exit point. You'll hear the voice of a Blood Tribe member who says, "You better go away, I'm telling you, man." At the 1 minute 27 mark of this video, you're going to hear the sound of a Blood Tribe member chambering around in his weapon.
You better go away. I'm telling you, man.
We're on a public street.
Watch.
I think they don't want us to see their vehicle or whatever, but it doesn't matter. Yeah, neither do I. I don't have those things.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching. I am about to make a pitch for literally my favorite startup in the world. It's called Storied Hats, and it is revolutionizing the apparel industry, starting with hats. I wear them, my kids wear them, not only because they look great, but because Storied Hats is a great company. Every piece of this is sustainably sourced, and the hats are made in ethical fair trade facilities. This is an apparel company with a conscience. A little inside baseball here. I actually know the owner, and he's one of the best people I have ever met. You wouldn't think a hat company could change the world, but this one is trying to. Most apparel is incredibly toxic. It's not made well, and it's not made ethically. Storied Hats is different. And I am told by my kids, it's also very stylish. Tons of colors, patterns, hats designed for all seasons. And the best part, no logos. If you don't want your forehead looking like a billboard, Storied Hats has you covered. Check them out at storiedhats.com and use BOATS for 15% off at checkout. That's storiedhats.com and use code BOATS at checkout. Thanks.
The next video was taken by the same journalists. They continued to follow the Blood Tribe members as they were walking away from protest. The Blood Tribe member who had just chambered around moments before approached the journalists and asked if they were going to dox them. What you will see is this Blood Tribe member saying, "If you keep following me, man," and then he'll tap his rifle just after he chambered it. That's a threat with a deadly weapon.
I don't care about license plates, but if you
keep following me, man.
Like U-Haul, that's something we want to see. Yeah, but I don't care if
you
about your license plates. If that's what you're. I heard you chamber around block back.
To recap, Chris Pohlhaus and the Blood Tribe are proud public Nazis. Well, with masks, because they're cowards, and their friends keep getting arrested for being pedophiles. But they speak openly about their desire to inflict terror and cause PTSD on their fellow citizens. They wave around weapons, they chamber rounds to intimidate people. Their national presence is growing as they expand their fascist street actions. Now, Blood Tribe presents an escalating threat level here in the US, and now we know they have ties to neo-Nazi Russian militias in Ukraine. Pohlhaus has told his followers that he wants to travel to Ukraine to establish a neo-Nazi pipeline of volunteer soldiers to the white supremacist cause. This is also a way to train and harden the men who've signed up for his white supremacist cause. These combat experiences will bond them, separate them from society, and make them more pliable to Pohlhaus's vision for anarchy and violence. His goal is no different from Al-Qaeda and ISIS luring people into the Middle East to train them to fight before sending them back to the US so that they can commit terrorism here at home. It's kind of nuts, right? Now, remember at the beginning I said I was going to tell you how you could do something about it? Well, here it comes. First, for the folks in Wisconsin, check with your local and state officials to see what they're doing to investigate Blood Tribe's threats against the LGBTQ community and those journalists. Open carry is legal. Chambering around and threatening to shoot a journalist for doing their job, that's crossing the line. It's important when you talk to law enforcement and government officials about Blood Tribe that you use the right terminology to describe them so that they understand how Blood Tribe should be investigated and prosecuted. Blood Tribe is an armed street gang as defined by law, and they're an unlawful militia which violates both federal and state law everywhere in this country. Second, this one's for everybody. Share this video with 3 friends, and that's going to make a difference. It's going to raise awareness about Pohlhaus and the Blood Tribe and accelerate their path to infamy in a way that weakens these groups and gets law enforcement to pay attention. Now, to be clear, the goal isn't to platform these groups. It's to educate people on how we unmask them, prosecute them, and fight them by every legal means possible. But beyond that, sharing this show helps the algorithm see that this content has relevance for people's lives, and then it recommends it to more folks. And it helps people to discover the community of us who are pushing back against these fascist street gangs in an active, meaningful way. I would not want for you to interact with these people in real life, but you can cause trouble for them by dragging them out where good folks can call them out. And then we can work together to impose legal, social, and economic costs on these violent street gangs and unlawful militia. Right now, today, Will you share this video with 3 people? It'll only take a minute. Thanks. Against All Enemies is produced by Ken Harbaugh in partnership with Task Force Butler. Our team includes our producer, Michael Alcessor, and the volunteer veterans who gather the intel and do the analysis that we're bringing to you in this new show every day. Come back tomorrow for another Against All Enemies. Please like and subscribe to this channel and share this video with 3 friends who you know care about our democracy. And check us out at taskforcebutler.org. See you soon.